Good evening, gearheads. Welcome to your Sunday night with Speed City. This is John Massingale. I'm joined by two of the most iconic voices in motorsport. Jonathan Green here in the studio with me, and from the Varsha broadcast campus in Atlanta, the voice of all American F1 fans know and love, Bob Varsha. Hey, Bob, it's been about 3 weeks since I've seen you. I guess since the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well now. I'm doing a lot better. I came home from the Nashville IndyCar weekend where I worked on the SRO race and came home with a bug that has taken me about 2 weeks to shake, but I'm a lot better than I was this time a week ago. Thanks for asking.
Well, tonight we as usual, we're being talking Formula One and all sorts of motorsports, but because Mr. Green spent the weekend shipping champagne and nibbling on caviar.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yes, indeed.
I may have got a sandwich once in a moment. But going back to Nashville, wasn't that a great event, Bob? It was horrible and humid and wet and rainy, but boy, they're pulling it off. I mean, they've got to start all over again because they're moving the Titan Stadium, and now they're going to take it down Broadway, which is going to be interesting to see a bunch of bachelorettes taking on the IndyCar drivers and a bunch of bars with blues pouring out of them. But
oh no!
Yeah. May have, it would be.
They have momentum on their side. I mean, IndyCar is obviously behind them. They want to hold their final event, their season-ending banquet there, which sounds like a great idea there in the home of country music. I'm reminded of my old Formula E colleague, Jack Nichols, who came 2 years ago to walk around and get to know Nashville.
Yeah, I saw him.
And I said to him, well, what'd you think? Did you go down to Broadway? And he said, yes. And I have to say, I have never seen so many people dressing the way they were, but not ironically.
But he would have said it like,
hats.
yes, I really enjoyed it, but I was quite surprised to see them not dressed ironically.
What's with all the cowgirls?
Yeah, I know. Exactly. It is a bit of a caricature, isn't it?
That's funny.
It is, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about Jonathan being out at Monterey.
Yes.
And we're going to hear all about the classic race cars on track.
Wow,
and
Bob's
all
done it many times too.
Yeah, and Bob's done it too. And there was the auctions, at least 3 auctions, I guess, if you count the Meekum.
Oh, no. 6, 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, between me and Bob, we've got both sides covered because he does the good stuff, the champagne swigging stuff. Well, I know he doesn't do that, but I mean the auctions and the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, all that kind of stuff. And I do the sort of nitty-gritty end of the weekend sort of racing where they come up and you see some fabulous cars that have either been auctioned that year or years before. But we go through the entire history. It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. It's a spectacular event. And with regard to the auctions in particular, it's got to be the biggest event this side of auction week in January in Scottsdale, Arizona, where they all gather because the money's in town. Yeah. And that's when all the big auctions, all the RM Sotheby's and the, what am I trying to think of?
There are multiple auctions, you mean?
Anyway, yeah.
Meekum, Gooding.
But Meekum Gooding is the name I was trying to think of. You know, the really sharp guys. And of course, Barrett Jackson.
Yeah.
Just thousands upon thousands of cars from the sublime to the ridiculous. And that's all over Monterey as well.
Well, just to give you an idea, and Bob, you're aware of this, there were at the racetrack for the weekend 400 entry cars. Now, not 400 drivers, because several drivers take 2 or 3 cars.
Right, yeah.
But 400 cars entered and, given the stamp of approval, 200.
And that's in the racing, though.
Yeah,
on track.
In the racing, on track, in 14 different groups. There were 200, so 600 cars in all applied, that was told, sorry, can't fit you in this year.
Wow.
And most of them would have been homologated and, true to the authenticity, which is required for those events to go on. Yeah. So that just tells you how tough it is.
It's a real gathering of the clans. And we're not talking about supercars or, Indy 500 winners or that kind of stuff. There are, brass era antiques and all kinds of stuff going around the racetrack. If you're into the history of the automobile, boy, it is there in spades.
It's the kind of event where if you took your daughter, for example, she's at an age now where she might be interested in learning what interests you. In one day, you could take her to a 1908 Ford Packard or a Packard or I don't know, an Indy Racer,
a steam car or whatever,
kind of. But because the Ragtime guys are out there, our first car on track was an early Grand Prix 1927 Bugatti all the way through to that Gordon Murray in 2023 and the new Corvette and the new E-Ray.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember doing a feature on a car. It was a Alfa Romeo 8C, whatever it was. It was an ex Nuvolari race-winning Grand Prix car. And I stood there and I looked at this thing and all the hand craftsmanship that went into it, and I choked up. I thought, Nuvolari has been gone for decades, but here's the car. It's still here.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Good
Go
point.
up and down the rows, and guys like Jonathan and John, you can look at car after car and say, I remember that car when it was a winner. I remember a race in which they did this. I remember who drove that car. It's just such a huge dream come true just to walk around and walk down memory lane and see all these cars.
Well,
lovingly observed.
Yeah. And this year we had something that I've been dreaming of for a while, which is Can-Am and Formula 5000, two different groups. So we had something like 20 Formula 5000. And interestingly enough, and Bob will back me up here, you always think of 5000 as an American championship. Well, it wasn't. It was a worldwide championship. And there were like 5 or 6 entries from Australia and New Zealand who brought their cars over.
I was really listening to that because I didn't know Can-Am very well. And I was like, I wanted to hear the history of it. I didn't really know the history of
Zach
Can-Am.
Brown... This is interesting.
I'm much
Zach
younger
Brown,
than you.
I know. Zach Brown drove a Formula One car that he owns, which is an Alan Jones winning World Championship F07 B.
Big,
and
flat billiard board looking thing.
Lovely. But it's his car, which always seems odd because he's the CEO of McLaren. But he also drove Bruce McLaren's first Can-Am car, all bright orange, papaya orange,
Maybe that's
obviously.
the one I was...
That was
the M8D.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So, wonderful.
And did you see the picture floating around the internet today?
Yes.
I think Zach posted it of Zach sitting with Jim Farley from Ford.
Yes.
One Adrian Newey wearing a McLaren cap, sitting there having dinner with these guys. Now, if that's not going to set off tongues wagging all over Formula One, I don't know what will.
Well, it was very funny when I got the entry list and I saw Adrian was coming. I was like, I wonder what he's going to drive. And I was like, duh, he's going to drive a GT40, his own.
Yes.
Of course he's going to drive a Ford.
Great cars. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that. And in fact, I clicked it. And before I even read the headline, and I saw Adrian Newey wearing a McLaren hat. And I was like, hang on a minute. And then I looked across the table and saw Zach Brown wearing a Red Bull hat. I was okay. I see.
They swapped hats.
I see what
got
happened
it now. Yeah.
Too much fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was and Zach Brown just kind of like you could just feel the like I'm ruling the roost right now because McLaren's doing so good and he's doing so good in IndyCar and he's driving those cars. Except for the story we're going to talk about later tonight.
How about Alex Palou?
Yeah, that's a different story. Yeah, and in fact, they're selling. So just to put some footnotes, McLaren's celebrating their 60th anniversary this year since Bruce McLaren formed the company, and Corvette were there as the centerpiece to celebrate 70 years of Corvette.
Yes, I noticed that. I watched the beginning of the Concours d'Elegance at Pebble Beach that came on at like 3 o'clock Austin time. And they started off and they had the beautiful scenery and they said, and celebrating anniversaries this weekend. And I was going, oh yeah, Corvette too. And they went McLaren 60th, Lamborghini 60th, Porsche 75th. No mention at that particular event. Well, it's not really a Corvette event.
No, yeah.
And I just thought it was funny that they didn't
I mentioned you to the Corvette guys.
Oh, did you really?
Well, because I said, when you come to America for the first time, when you grow up in England, nobody talks about, well, what does it get to the wheel? What are you getting there? Nobody talks about the power of the engine and how many horsepower you're going to get because we grew up with minis and escorts. Come on, it's all small displacements, so no one cares. It's all about styling and elegance and that beautiful Italian machine and listen to the roar of that Ferrari.
Right. It's all right there in the name. Concours d'Elegance.
Yeah.
It's a car that has that special something. Doesn't mean it'll go 10 zillion miles an hour.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it costs $10 zillion. It's just a car that you look at and it speaks to you. And that's what the judges are asked to find in each of the classes that they judge. Where's the car that speaks to everybody? And it's great fun, I have to say.
One thing that I love, a kind of footnote again, was when you start getting, when you spend time over in Monterey and you get to know the real history, because Laguna Seca didn't open until '57, so it was an interesting period.
I learned that during your broadcast.
Yeah, when tracks were being made, like Road America and Watkins Glen and so on and so forth, because up until that point, it was Sebring and many other airfields. Sebring's still going, but most of the other airfields disappeared, except Sebring, which is ironic. But anyway, the first winner of a race in Pebble Beach and in Monterey was actually a Jaguar imported from the UK, but driven by one Phil Hill, you may have heard of.
Yeah,
the
Pebble Beach Road Races.
Oh, wait a minute. This was 1957?
No, 1950.
Oh, okay.
They ran 5 years of races
before
around
the track.
Yeah, before the track was built.
Okay, because when you said 57, I was thinking about the 1957 Jaguar XKSS.
Yes.
Which was a super lightweight, and one of those
Yeah,
sold.
that was a very special car.
Yeah, a really unique car, and one of those sold at the auction, one of the auctions out there. I think it was Sotheby's or however it is, for $13 million.
But you talk about the fact that it's not all big stars, which it isn't. Certainly not racing driver stars. But for example, Aaron Shelby was there. Tatum, if you know your historic racing, the son of the maker of the Tatum car was there. And these are all specials that were kind of built here in California and around America.
Yeah.
That were either copies or amalgamations. And of course, there was Cobras there, which of course is the opposite, which is a amalgamation of a British car, an AC, and a Cobra from Shelby.
Did you know that the first year they ran both the Pebble Beach Road Races and the Concours, and one followed the other by a few years? Phil Hill completed the sweep. He won the road race, and then a car that he had restored won the Concours. So, he swept up the girl and the check and the trophy and put his cars on the trailer and said, "See ya, folks." That's one of my favorite Phil Hill stories. But you're right, Jonathan, that this is when racetracks were being built, mainly because the road races that preceded them were killing people.
Yeah, they were.
Watkins Glen, Road America, Monterey. You just can't run on public roads when the cars get to a certain danger level.
Yeah.
And so it was.
All right, well, let's get a quick break in. And when we come back, we have a little more to talk about. We're going to talk about what car we would buy at one of these auctions if we had $1 million.
Oh.
You're listening to Sunday Night with Speed City. Back after this.
Okay, good. Hey, so are you also going to run those interviews?
Yeah, that's right. I meant to tease them. Sorry. Well, we're still live on YouTube right now. What you got, Bob? What's your?
Well, he's going to tell us on air.
Yeah, you'll tell us in a minute. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll tell you this: it's not one car.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, Paul Bryan is on YouTube, and he says all the Monterey stuff was fabulous, and I love it.
Oh, good man.
But he said it, but it was like racing methadone. T-1 week. Oh, to get back to the track for real. Okay. Yeah.
Right. That's the
drug
counter agent.
Took me a second there. I get you,
I wasn't
Paul.
there, Paul. It couldn't have been that good.
Man, when is he coming on the show? It's all very well making
I've
jokes from the
invited him on the
rafters.
show before, by the way.
We really should get Paul on. He does.
I've invited him
I
on.
think he still does. A show called.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back. And when I went to the break, I did forgot to tease something because we have a couple of interviews that Jonathan got while he was out in Monterey. We're going to hear from.
Well, it's actually my cohort got the interview.
Oh, that's right.
I was stuck in the booth.
He was doing a good job for you, by the way.
Yeah, Kevin Harris, lovely man.
Yeah, and so let's see, which are those, Jonathan?
Well, I've got the one I really like is Peter Brock.
It's
because one of the first things you taught me was the split screen Corvette of 1963.
Split window, yeah.
Split window, I mean.
Split window.
Split window of 1963. And you got all excited about it. And I was like, well, what's the significance? Because, I mean, obviously I love a Corvette. I love it. I was like, well, they only did it for 1 year. And I was like,
and I didn't really know.
And most people, that's where most people stop. And so this was a chance for me to learn and for our audience to learn who penned it, who kind of came up with it, and the story behind why it was only made for 1 year. And interestingly enough, it wasn't the big bosses of Corvette that said, oh, we've got this great idea. It was an intern.
Huh. Well, you know what? Let's play that one now, and we'll come back to our auction dream cars.
Here's Kev Harris.
The man that started it all with the famous split window all those years ago. It was 1957, Peter. I understand you're an intern at GM.
That's correct.
You're downstairs in a little office that nobody really knows about, and somebody walks in that office and says, "Can someone design me a car?" And the rest is history.
Well, Bill Mitchell had just taken over as director of styling, and of course the whole Corvette program had been canceled by General Motors because there was an agreement with the American Manufacturers Association. They were all going to quit racing. Mitchell was a car guy with gasoline in his veins. He said, no way, we're going to continue the car. So they couldn't do the project upstairs in the official Chevrolet studio. So he came down where the interns were working, where I was, and there were three of us down there, and he explained what he wanted to do, laid out some pictures. He'd seen some cars that influenced him from the Turin show, and he selected my work off the wall. And we've got the original sketch done in 1957, and the car has not changed hardly a line. It took 6 years from that sketch to the time it was finally done, and that says a lot for the power of Bill Mitchell to stay in that direction, and also for the timelessness of the design. So the design has become a real classic, and it's fantastic to be a part of it under Bill Mitchell.
Absolutely. I mean, what a great story as well. And just cast your mind back to that time. You said there was three of you down there in that office as interns.
Yeah.
The other two guys, I mean, was it a friendly environment? Was there a bit of competitive rivalry, or how was it?
We were all top designers, great guys, and we were all worked together on the project. And, of course, you know, when they put the stuff up on the wall, Mitchell walked around and he liked what I had done, and that turned out to be the direction that we went. At that point, he gave me the direction to do the thing full size in clay, and at that point, then I got to refine it even more. And then it was very interesting because I designed it without the split window in it. So the car was completely done, and Mitchell came in and said, you know, I want to split the window on it. So we split the window on it. At that point, Zora Dunshoff came in and said, what is this? We cannot have this. This is stupid, you know. So he got in a big fight with Mitchell over the split window. And finally, Mitchell threw him out of styling, said, you go back to engineering. This is styling. This is my car. I'm going to do it the way I want. So Zora went to Ed Cole, who was the vice president for Chevrolet, complained about it. So Cole brought Mitchell and Zora Dunshoff, sat him down, and they both argued what they were going to do. And he said, okay, this is what we're going to do. He says, Bill, he says, I know how important it is aesthetically to have the split window. We're going to let you have that for 1 year, and then we're going to put a single window in the back like Zora wants. So that's why we have the split window on only 1 year, because it was Bill Mitchell's aesthetic design to do it that way.
What a fantastic story, and I don't know if many people know that, but I mean, for 1 year, and then it's become such an icon.
Yeah.
And what's it like for you, Peter, when you walk across the way to that Corvette awning over there, and there's all different generations of Corvettes lined up, right up to the brand new one that's part electric, part internal combustion engine now. What's it like for you as a designer to look across that heritage of vehicles?
Well, it's incredible because seeing it, the whole thing because the Mitchell era started the real Corvette thing. Obviously, Harley Earl started with the 53 stuff, but the real Corvette came in with Zora Dunshoff and Bill Mitchell, and a great set of engineering and design, and it kept getting better and better and better. And to be, you know, remembered as part of the beginning of that whole tradition of great Corvettes, it's been a real honor, just a tremendous thing. And so I see what they're doing now. It's probably the best engineered car in the world, you know, and to be able to go out in the dealership and buy that car for about 1/3 of the highest priced supercars in the world, it's really an honor.
Yeah, Bob.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that
It's
go ahead.
that's not a real rare phenomenon that that we were just listening to. The idea of a 1 year only,
Yeah.
because in 4 years later, in 1967, the Corvette had what was known as the Stinger hood, which was a beautiful hood scoop with a sort of spearhead going out the
Yep.
front. 1 year only, 67. That's a dead giveaway as to what you're looking at.
Amazing.
And
I love stories like that, though.
I know that's a fantastic.
An intern penned
absolutely.
it. An
The other
intern
thing
penned
that
it.
always
And hearing
that
it from the
drives me
horse's
crazy
mouth,
is-
you know.
yeah, all those beautiful concept cars that were developed, a lot of them from clay models, as we just heard, were crushed. They wouldn't let them out the door, just make them disappear.
Yeah.
And a million years ago at Barrett Jackson, a car came across the block. It was an Oldsmobile, sort of a Corvette clone. It was a 2-seat roadster, concept car for Oldsmobile. And the story was that it was slated to be crushed, but a group of guys, and here we go with all the cloak and dagger stuff again at GM, they took it apart during their work days, one part after another, got snuck out the back door, and they put it together somewhere else. The car existed. It sold for like $2 million or something. And I think it just changed hands again this weekend at Pebble Beach or at one of the associated auctions. So I just love this kind of stuff.
There's one of my favorites is the Chrysler Turbine car that escaped. There's like 4 or something like that. And Jonathan, I don't know if you know this car, but it's actually powered by a jet engine. and Chrysler made it, and they only made I don't know, 10 or something, Bob. I don't remember, but Jay Leno
Who
has
drove it?
one.
Sammy Hagar.
Well, and it was not really ready for the road. It worked though. Leno drove his on his show.
That's wild.
But yeah,
hell, they raced turbines at Indianapolis.
Yeah,
that's
Lotus.
true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, I love those stories. I actually got I went to the revival of the Nassau Speed Weeks once again a million years ago.
Bahamas, yeah.
And yeah, in the Bahamas. And I got a great interview with Zora Arcus Duntov, very late in life, but he was just as lively as he could be. He could be, hard nosed. And then he said, well, we built 6 Grand Sport Corvettes to race around the world, and all 12 of them are here this weekend. And went on with those kinds of jokes. Spent 20 minutes with the guy. Great interview. Couldn't wait to listen back. My cameraman looks at me and says, I didn't get the audio.
Oh!
We've all been there.
That's a
I
firing.
buried him at sea.
Yes, I hope so. There's a few audio men down there.
That reminds me of the first time I ever interviewed Mario Andretti. I had my sound gear all set up, and as I was walking over there, I went, just in case, I grabbed my iPhone and I hit the record button. I slid it behind my microphone.
Smart move.
And I had screwed up the good gear, but my iPhone was there, saved my butt. But, hey, speaking of Corvettes,
God bless Apple.
Jonathan, they had at least 3 of the Serve Corvettes, and the Serve Corvettes were these prototypes. They were, concept cars that never made it to production. And you know what they were? They were mid-engine.
Yes.
Sound familiar?
Yeah.
The new C8.
They finally did it.
You know the story now after this weekend. But yeah, I was looking. In fact, we've got one of those in the clips folder, Casey. That's the one that I remember that Casey has that we're showing. It was it was like around late 80s, early 90s. It was a Serve 3, I think. And one of the engines they put in that one was the Lotus designed Mercury Marine built LT5 dual overhead cam 32 valve Corvette engine that nobody knows that was ever made, right? That all Corvette engines were push rods and 2 valves. And I had a couple of those ZR1s, and I even had one at a car show, and somebody said, why'd you swap that good old American V8 out for that dual overhead cam? And I was like, no, this came from the factory. But yeah, those that actually happened to me. I was like, no, that came with the car. I promise you. But
but knowledge is a terrible thing.
Yes, exactly. But speaking of American muscle cars, Jonathan, did you get to see? I know they had it there. And I know you're in the booth. I know you. I'm sure you didn't.
know.
But they had the new Mustang GTD there. What they had something like a prototype or something, right? Was it there? Is that
Oh
what
yeah, oh definitely it was there. Yeah, and in fact, we got an interview with Jim Farley about it, the CEO of Ford, about it, and it was funny because we could have run that, and we can run it next week if you like, but we've got that interview with Jim where he basically says, why should we let Aston Martin have all the fun? We're coming back, and we're gonna bring this racing, and we're going racing back and forward, and we're gonna bring this new GT3. It's gonna be beautiful.
That one, Bob, did your eyebrows raise like mine when you saw the price tag of a Mustang?
Yes. Honesty compels me to admit $300,000 sounds like a lot of money, but I don't know all the details of the car. I haven't seen the performance parameters. I don't know what it's going to do, but okay, that's still a lot of money.
Well, I have some of that. First of all, it's going to be a 800 plus horsepower, supercharged 5.2 liter. Yes.
Yeah.
But really, it's not all about the horsepower in this case. Actually, unlike most Mustangs, it's a race car.
Yeah.
It's inspired by the GT3 car that they're putting out right now, and it's got a dual clutch automatic. It's got racing suspension. It's a race car.
All the bells and whistles. Yeah.
And they're going to put it in IMSA. I mean, they're going racing.
Yeah, and I don't.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that exact car.
No.
But it's kind of the opposite of what you think of IMSA, where some of the, especially like GT4 level, where it's a street car. They strip it out and they put race suspension and race bespoke everything. Well, this is almost like the opposite. They start with the GT3 car, make it a street car.
I mean, Ford's racing history is exceptional, no question.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to the turn of the 20th century. But I will say the Mustang, which came to life as America's sporty car, although Mike Joy will tell you it was sort of a Susie Secretary car at the start because it was a 260 cubic inch engine, kind of gutless, whatever, but cute and fun. And then it got into the performance vein and you went on to the Boss Mustangs and so on. But Ford has not raced the Mustang. And don't start me on NASCAR Cup racing and how those are Mustangs. They're not.
Yeah, or Trans Am.
To race that Mustang is something Ford's never really done. And so I'm delighted to see they're going to take that car after, 60 years of Mustang existence and actually make it into a race car and, go take on the world. I love it.
Mm.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny. We hadn't really thought about it, but that's a really good point. You think of the Mustang has been their highest performing car for the street outside of the GT, the GT40 and the GT. You think, why wouldn't they have ever raced that? But yeah, it's about time, right? Yeah. All right, let's get a quick break in. When we come back, we got some Formula One stories. We got some Formula One / IndyCar stories that we're going to talk about. You're listening to Sunday Night with Speed City. Back after this. All right, Bob. You know what? Let's get our auction picks.
I don't have a starting grid.
Let's get our auction picks in during the break. We'll start with yours.
Okay.
What were you thinking? If you had $1 million and you were out at Monterey at one of the several auctions that were out there, what would you shop for?
I would find a decent, not a trailer queen, but a decent, drivable Mercedes. I'm not going to get a 300, so I'll get a 190 Roadster.
Okay.
I'll have money left over, so I'll get a muscle car, probably like a 67 Pontiac GTO or an Olds 442, and then a car I've always wanted, a 1969 Chevy Corvair Monza.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The turbocharged flat six, right?
The turbo, with the
Air
swoopy
cooled.
second generation styling. Yeah.
Sound familiar, Jonathan?
Yes.
A turbocharged flat six air cooled in the back of a car. You're thinking, okay, this is a Porsche 911 Turbo. No, it's a Chevrolet Corvair.
Oh, Corvair, right. Yeah.
Corvair. And when you see it, and you've seen them, you may not. Yeah. They don't look like anything special, really.
It's another car in that line of, as I was talking earlier about concept cars that never saw the light of day in production, but cars like the Corvair, like the Pontiac Fiero, which everybody was afraid was going to outdo the Corvette, so they killed that off. These cars that never really had a chance to shine the way they could have. Um, anyway, there's that. And if I have any money left over, I'm buying a Nash Metropolitan. You know what that is?
I do. Yes, that's great.
Put, 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 put.
Yes, I like
Or
that.
a Citroen Duchevaux.
Oh,
I
yeah.
like those two.
2 cylinders, one for you and one for your passenger.
Hi, this is Jay Leno from JayLenosGarage.com, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Bob, you know where I learned about the Citroen Duchevaux? On
Nope.
Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I think
good place to learn.
I think the comedian was the French comedian Gad. I can't remember his last name, but that line was from Seinfeld. One cylinder, one for each for me, one for you.
Yeah, I love those cars. They used to run 24-hour races for those cars over in Europe. There was a car show, out in the church parking lot here in Atlanta, where I met a guy who had a Duchevaux. You talk about one cylinder for the driver, one for the passenger. He had an engine for the driver and an engine for the passenger. It was a twin engine Duchevaux. And so, you see maybe one here and there around the country. My wife and I lived in Paris for about 6 months back in 2018. And I was walking through the city one day, and I came upon this tour launch point, and it was a tour that took you around Paris in Duchevaux. And there was like 30 of them all lined up by the curb, all shiny and looking great. And I thought, damn, what would it take for me to stick one of those in my pocket and wander off?
The comedian that Seinfeld had on was let's see, it's Gad Elmaleh, I think it's something like that. But he said in France those cars they were like driven by nuns. He said that was the joke because they were super practical and 2 cylinders. But anyway, that's the history of that car.
Didn't well, yeah, it was all post-war stuff. They didn't have materials, they didn't have fuel, yada yada yada. Didn't Peter Sellers drive one in one of the?
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
I don't know that, but that sounds about right for Inspector Clouseau.
It would be just the car to drive. Yeah. Good fun.
Hey,
I want one.
Hey guys, let's talk a little bit of Formula One and motorsports. Let's start with a story that's a crossover between Formula One and IndyCar. And Bob, I thought about you when I saw this story because of your jurisprudence background, but because of Alex Palou is back in the silly season news. This is crazy, Bob.
It's absolutely crazy. Now I don't know all the ins and outs, so who am I to judge? But for Alex Palou to sign 2 contracts with 2 different teams twice is just mind-boggling to me. I thought it was crazy when who was the Formula One driver who did it? I can't remember now. Jean Alesi.
Yes,
with
yes,
Ferrari
he did.
and Williams one year. Yeah, but this is nuts. I'll tell you a story. I was leaving the Formula E race at Berlin years and years ago, and the Mexican driver Esteban Gutierrez had just announced he was walking away from his Formula E ride, and I was in a car going back to the hotel with Dario Franchitti, my colleague, and his manager Julian Jacobi, who is perhaps the most influential and respected manager in motorsports.
He played a role with Senna at one point, didn't he? I think.
Oh yeah, Senna, Prost, you name it. He's got this litany of great driver clients. And I said to him, this news about Gutierrez, what's going on? And he just looked at me and shook his head and he said, the kid is destroying his own career. You cannot walk away from a contract and expect to, have any kind of a career. And thus it's kind of been for Esteban, who is a good kid, but I think he just got bad information. And somehow I get the sense that that's what's happening with Alex Palou, who did the deal with Ganassi and with McLaren. And now he's turned away from McLaren and everybody's mad and everybody's suing. And his
management,
original management team, right? Was it Monaco increase
Yep.
management said, "We're out. I don't know what he's doing. This is crazy. Good luck, pal. We're gone."
So,
So
Bob,
his previous manager, a guy named Roger Yasukawa, is picking him up. But
Bob,
the
can
worst
you
is yet to
can
come.
you confirm with me and the audience what I think is the correct procedure, which is he was due to drive with Ganassi this year with a view to going to McLaren in 24. That was what all parties believed, and that is what was negotiated by his Monaco management team. But he's been going pretty well in Ganassi, and now has changed his mind and wants to stay at Ganassi. And quite rightly, Zach Brown is, hang on a minute, he's been doing our testing program, and we were going to get him,
They gave him money, too.
And they gave him money, too.
They gave him an advance on his salary,
And obviously gave him
his
a testing
original
program.
deal, he signed a contract with McLaren for 2023. Ganassi objected. Negotiating took place. Okay, Ganassi can keep him for 2023. We, as McLaren, get him in 2024. And now, as you say, he's killing everybody in 2023. He's probably going to win another championship. Apparently, Ganassi has offered him a very unchip-like contract offer of, eye-popping salary.
Well, all right.
So I don't know if it's just youthful exuberance
or bad
stupidity.
advice.
Well, let me ask about the elephant in the room then. I mean, I agree with what you said about Esteban, and it could be the same for Palou here. But with Piastri and Norris, where's the room for Alex? And I mean, he must be looking at this going, well, Piastri really is the real deal and has proved it.
Yes.
Norris is not going anywhere. So where would, if Alex did fulfill that contract for 24, he would literally get maybe the odd Friday drive, right?
Yep. He was lined up for 3 Friday drives, as I recall, plus the whole McLaren, old car testing program that he was going to do with Piastri. I think, and I don't know again, but I think the idea was he would sign for McLaren, counting on the fact that either Lando or Piastri would clear space for him. Either Piastri would fall on his face, or Lando would be picked up by another team should a Lewis Hamilton, should a Red Bull want to replace Sergio, and so on. That there would be a place for him with a good team.
Well, I'm starting to think that Palou's got it right.
In what way?
In that is his best option, is to stay on a decent salary at Ganassi.
No question.
Well, okay, so think about it. Think about it, guys. He's going to win this championship for the first time since over a decade before the end of the season, right? Before the final race.
And it's his second championship.
Right. And
no question about it.
And so the highest paid IndyCar drivers are around $6.5 million. I think it's Herta and Scott Dixon are around $6.5 million bucks.
Yep.
To get to that kind of level in Formula One, you're going to be top 10. Now, not including, endorsements and all that other stuff, but salary, you're top 10 to get to close to, above $5 million bucks. And so he probably is smarter just financially to stay, from a career standpoint. You can always say, I missed that. I didn't go to Formula One. But it's so hard. You can be the best of the best and still look. Alonso had trouble finding the right seat. We've seen it before.
Been the drawback of why he's only got 2 titles. I would argue is that he has not. Been
the reality, the cold shower is you can't do a deal and then get down the road and say,
yes,
you know what, that didn't work out the way I thought it was going to. So I'm done. I'm not going to honor the contract now. So now I think what's going to happen is they're going to go back and sort of unwind the whole thing and say, okay, Chip has already said Alex has always been contracted to us. And I don't know what the length of the Ganassi contract was, but obviously another year or 2, I would think. And then, McLaren, if it is decided that Ganassi's contract was valid, then McLaren's contract couldn't be. And so, the whole thing kind of collapses on itself. It's going to cost Alex Palou a lot of money.
He's a 26-year-old.
And the sad thing is, it might hurt the career of an obviously very talented guy.
Yeah.
And
I still
that's
think he's
probably
young
the
enough
sign.
for people to vie on his talents, to bring them.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
I also think that if I want to connect the dots, and correct me if you don't agree, that the emergence of returning Ricardo with a possibility of now taking Perez's seat has changed, has been part of that process in Pelot's mind or management's mind. That sort of what you said, that shift of somebody like Norris or Piastri being picked up as Verstappen's next teammate, and now Ricardo being in the picture potentially. Guys, done one race, but I think that's all right. But you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is crazy.
Nuts. It's exciting.
Yeah. All right, let's get our last break in really quick, and we'll be back with your Sunday Night with Speed City.
You know the really weird thing?
Bob, I reached out on the YouTubes because I knew Andy P would probably know more than all three of us. And he said Pelot did the FP1 drive last year. Already did the prior year test. He says I get the IndyCar angle. The unknown is if there's another F1 team. He's heard rumors of Williams and maybe Aston interested in him. He said, and if they could get him an F1 seat quicker than McLaren could. I mean, that's very, very, very possibly. Andy P says, he says, I like Pelot a lot, but I hope he but I hope he has his ducks aligned for what he wants, because Bob's right. Once he gets a reputation for being scorched earth, his career could suffer.
Yeah, good line.
Yeah, you can't say, okay, I'm going to sign this rainbow of contracts, and pick the one that offers me the best deal down the road. I mean, that's just not how it works.
No.
Now there are things, and I'm thinking, I haven't been able to follow up this story, but there was a wild rumor that Carlos Sainz had signed something called a pre-contract with another team in the event Ferrari doesn't have him back. To be continued.
All right, here we go.
Ooh.
Hi, this is Karun Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, we were continuing. If you don't know, we continue during the breaks on YouTube if you're listening on the radio. But Bob, you were talking about a pre-contract. That sounds kind of like you're pre-pregnant. What exactly is a pre-contract?
Well, it's a device that's been used before in Formula One, and it's another way of securing a driver's future. And it's just what it sounds like. It's sort of an agreement that the parties will come together if certain things happen, and those could be any number of different things. A rumor flew recently that Carlos Sainz, of whom we've heard a lot with regard to the bruised feelings at Ferrari, if that's the case. Charles Leclerc has said, no, it's all blown out of proportion. But I'm not sure Carlos Sainz is as happy as he could be at Ferrari. He's already said Ferrari can expect not to be on the podium unless they take a step up. So he's putting the lash to the team. But if in fact he has signed a pre-contract with another team, doesn't mean he's committed to them unless a certain number of things happen. And that's lawyers great, I suppose. And that's something that Alex Palou, I think, could have done if he wanted to sort of cover his bases. I want to be in this team at that time if everything goes well, yada, yada, yada. His Ganassi contract has to end at some point unless he just decides to sweep everything way in front of him and do another deal with Chip. Or he could structure his future without signing a contract says, I'm definitely going here on this date and so on. I think it could have been handled differently. And again, it all comes back to the fact that I think, this great talent is being poorly advised.
Poorly advised, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And this company, Monaco Increased Management, they released a statement. They are pretty much doing what we're talking about. They're saying you have scorched earth, and because the statement says Monaco Increased Management is bitterly disappointed to learn about Alex Palou's decision to break an existing agreement with McLaren and beyond. I mean, they basically came out and threw him under the bus and said, if you're another management company, and that this is what this kid does.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have to say though,
that implies that he did it without
Their knowledge.
informing his management.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
I have to say, though, the one true thing about motor racing is if you are the champion of Indy, you've got a lot more ducks on the table than most. And if you are a two-time champion, yeah, exactly. If you're a two-time champion of Indy, then even better. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I don't think he's going to be not in the limelight.
Hey, before we go into some more F1 stories, I wanted to pivot back because sports cars, we're talking about them all for half the show. But we have a tie-in with Formula One because Coda announced that they are, if you're in the area, and this is probably, I don't care where I lived, if I was in the United States and I had a cool muscle car, they're looking for cars to put into the driver's parade here in Austin. So if you have a cool muscle car, 1-800-CODA. No, I don't know what the phone number is. They reach out to them on whatever, on their website probably, because they've got a post about it. What do they say? Oh, it says drivers parade at thecircuit.com. They said send your submissions today.
Can I borrow your car, John?
Well, they're actually looking for 1960s and 70s convertibles so the drivers can sit on the back, obviously.
I have to say, one thing Coda might consider in the future, and this is just throwing it out there, but with the money and the amount of historic cars just in Texas alone, you could have an amazing festival of cars.
You don't have to leave Austin to fill this entire 20 cars, 20 muscle cars from the 60s and 70s. I know one building where you could do that in North Austin.
Yeah, we both do.
Wouldn't it be fun if one of us involved with the radio show could be driving the driver parade car, and we're talking with Lewis, or we're talking with Fernando, or we're talking with whoever it is. So what do you think? That would be cool.
I like your thinking, Bob.
I'll put you forward for it, Bob. I like it.
Thank you.
All right, let's see what other Formula One stories we got in here. Jonathan, did we talk about the possible DRS ban last week? I saved that story.
Yeah, we did. We touched upon it, but Bob wasn't here, so I really respect getting his
get his take on it, because this is your baby. You're really wanting this to happen.
Because they're talking about, well, first of all, Bob, that I've been banging on about I'm fed up with DRS, because the whole idea of changing the cars to have the more downforce and all the rest of it, and all the rule changes that were put in were to make the racing closer, and that has happened. But the DRS is still there, and I'm still now starting to think whether we actually really need it. And this story, which pricked my interest, was the fact that they were going to get rid of it for qualifying. And we then went into a discussion about whether, okay, well, do we look towards curtailing it at least, where you're only, let's say, allowed to use it, a bit like the Indy Boost, only 10 times, for example, or over a period of a Grand Prix, and you save it for when you need it, or you save it to get away from the guy chasing you. And then it becomes a tactical situation, rather than this sort of what I would call pedestrian, well, I'm not going to overtake you here because you're just going to overtake me in the next DRS zone, which I feel is starting to become part of modern Formula One. And I just think that the whole point was to get the cars closer together, give them a chance to race closer and take opportunity to pass. And I just think that DRS has had its day.
That's a very plausible opinion. I know Graham Rahal was particularly caustic about the DRS. He much prefers the push to pass to have an Indy car, but I think there may be other motivations there as well. I saw an interesting suggestion on social media. Someone said, well, let's flip the script. How about if you can use your DRS until you get to the back of the car within 1 second that you want to pass, then you lose it.
Right.
That goes back to the original goal of DRS, that it wasn't to pass, it was
to get
close
closer.
it up.
Yeah, to close the gap.
See, I'd be happier with that.
That was intriguing.
Yeah, I'd be happier with that.
I'm thinking.
I like that idea, actually.
I obviously I like both of them. I'm thinking I don't know. I think right now instinctively I like the limitation, because it is kind of cool to it adds a bit of strategy to how much push to pass and Indy you have left, or if you had an X amount left, whether it was number of times or amount of seconds with the DRS open. So I don't know. I mean, either way, it's I do like something though. I think we should do something, and I think there's something that that could be done to make it more exciting because it's really
Well,
it's not right now.
I kind of fall more into the purist category, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Um, I think there's a real danger in assisting people who haven't done as good a job as the guys they're chasing. It's as simple as that to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
You're supposed to build a competitive car, and if you weren't able to do it, well, get used to finishing
Last.
14th.
Yeah.
Right. Um,
I agree.
I don't think you can artificially close things up.
And that's the word, isn't it? It's artificial.
Yeah, artificial.
We call it motor racing.
It's
we don't call it.
artificial.
We
Yeah.
don't call it exciting things that happen.
Right. No, you go racing.
I'm going to start a new series that's called that: exciting things that can happen.
Well, I mean, I'm Bubble. I'm sort of guilty of it, but Crofty's going, oh, and it's a great overtake, and
well, that's his job, but
I
you're
know
right.
it's his
It's
job.
artificial. You're right.
But you look at some of those
That's
overtakes
a
and go,
whole
really,
separate thing.
was that really that exciting? Because it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was just a DRS
Right.
move.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And I'm not blaming
And that's what
Crofty because
Graham
that's
was
his
talking
job. But
Hey, so
Yep.
speaking of artificial things, the next story I wanted to talk about was Bobby Epstein was interviewed by the folks at motorsport.com, and they were talking about the glitz and glamour of Miami and Vegas. And everybody's come full circle with COTA now, it feels like, because now COTA is the purest. COTA is the real racing. COTA is the iconic. It seems crazy.
What are you saying? We got no glitz and glamour?
Well, not compared to Vegas, for sure.
Baby.
Come on, Austin, Texas, baby.
And
we got all right.
But yeah, Bobby was. There's a couple quotes in this motorsport.com story. He said, we don't need to change our recipe. It's really working, and he's right now. 440,000 last year and 400,000 the year before that. Of course, I think right now those 2 years you could have had a Formula One race just about anywhere, and you could have. But that's not to take anything away from COTA, because they have the last 2 years they have figured it all out. Everything, every complaint, whatever.
And I would argue that whatever happens in the next 20 years, COTA has managed to create its own Watkins Glen. And what I mean by that is that Watkins drivers used to love going to still do, but for Formula One, love to go to Watkins Glen because it was a great race course. And I think COTA has that going for it, both on 2 and 4 wheels. And that is why that's its secret sauce, really. And of course, Austin's a great town, don't get me wrong. But what I'm getting at is it doesn't need to suddenly do something artificial like create a glamour and have a prize with diamonds and a Red Bull party that's like no other, or put fake yachts in Lady Bird Lake, whatever. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's got something special, and it's the track itself.
Yeah. And this article is really good.
I agree. I think
Go ahead, Bob.
Bobby has a long-term vision. Bobby has a long-term vision, and I think as it plays out, we'll see that he does know what he's doing, or he's getting great advice from people who know how to do this. Austin, I don't need to tell you guys, is very distinctive from Miami, from Las Vegas. So,
and it has none of the pretense of those 2 places.
Right, exactly. We're not building anything. What you see is what you get. And that includes a concert with Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift or
Queen and the Killers.
When do we get Aerosmith? I want to see Aerosmith.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, talking of good advice, tip my hat again to Bobby Epstein for employing Andy Suchek. Not somebody I would have immediately picked out of a hat as a motorsport director. When you know his career and you know who he knows and who he goes out to play with of a weekend, i.e. in WEC, because he's still very much involved in sports car racing and motor racing, brilliant choice to be at COTA.
And Bobby says, by the way, be careful. Let me go back to this article. Bobby says, I was listening to a podcast, he says, and he said, all they mentioned was Vegas and Miami. I hope that wasn't us.
I don't think it would be.
No, I don't think it would be either. And by the way, you can hear every radio show we do as a podcast on your favorite podcast.
Look at my shirt.
I know, we both have COTA shirts on tonight. Yeah.
Austin's got, the best possible offering for that weekend, and that's Austin itself.
I was going to say, Vegas
I'm sure
and Miami
Vegas is great.
Yeah,
and Miami is great, but they're not Austin.
Austin's got it's special too. I would say that. So
yeah, and it's funny. You spent a lot of the opening years sort of going to asking waiters or wherever we were in Austin because you wanted your town to know about this new thing. But the truth is that actually doesn't matter. Look at the journalists that stay here for 3 days before going to Mexico because they want to be here. They want to get barbecue. They want to hang out.
All right, boys, we are out of time. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We're back to Formula One. I know this hour flew by. We're back to Formula One this weekend, and so we'll start on Saturday. But go to our website, speedcitybroadcast.com, and check out all the ways to watch and listen and all that. And, of course, follow us on Twitter and Facebook and, I don't know, maybe some other ones. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next weekend.
Happy trails.
Cheers.